assumed that I could go anywhere in the country.
Now, excuse me, I'm sorry. What is, my ignorance, what is SACS?
SACS, Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. It's an accrediting body.
And they accredit NOVA?
They accredit NOVA.
Okay.
We were accredited in December, and I opened up the first 2 clusters in January and 2 clusters in February. I taught one cluster, and Lou Rubin taught the other one, curriculum and clinical supervision. Then we reversed it.
Okay.
So we bought a year, 6 months' time before we had to really tool up. And during those 6 months, I got a director for the program in Don Mitchell, came out of Harvard. Jerry Schroep, that came out of University of Chicago. They came here full time, and they oversaw this program. Then for the community college, I had Chiliano. He brought Ross Morton, and they oversaw another program for community college people because they were going from junior colleges to community colleges.
Okay.
And we were helping them in their transfer.
What is the difference between a junior college and in this sense that you're talking about? What is the difference between a junior college and a community college?
They were going through a transformation. The community college has both academic associate degrees, 2 different levels. First 60 credits.
Okay.
And the content for skills.
Right. And junior college was just content for skills.
That's right.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
So we were making a transference.
Okay. Now you probably can say, this is off the subject and I apologize, but you can probably say there aren't very many junior colleges anymore.
No, now they're becoming 4-year institutions.
Right. Okay.
But in California, there are junior colleges because they already had the 3-tier system.
Mm-hmm.
They had the universities, they had the colleges, and they have junior colleges.
Right. I've worked with some junior colleges in California. But how did you, I guess what I'm kind of curious about is how did you come up with this idea? That's, a lot of times as somebody, I'm interested in just the innovation of things.
In 69, 68, see, I came from Berkeley here in 66.
Mm-hmm.
In 67, we took in our first PhD students, 17 students. But we were not fully accredited. In 1970, we were going to be fully accredited. In 69, I had a good friend, Medill Bear, who came out of Carmel, superintendent who came to Hartford, Connecticut. And that's where I created the school within a school with his principles.
Okay.
And that was in the summer. So I would go there for a month and a half, and I did that. And when I got the evaluation in January from Harvard, I said to myself, if you can do that in that short period of time, imagine if we had them for 3 years.
Right.
And they earned a doctorate, an EDD
Right.
in education. So I wrote a concept paper, and in 1970, when we went through accreditation, Gordon Sweet, who came out of the Southern Association, I gave him the concept paper, and I told him what I was going to do, and he read it. I said, so when you're accrediting NOVA, I'd like you to accredit that particular program, as well as the university. And he did that for me, with the understanding that he would come back every year for 5 years and look at that program. I said, fine. And that's how it started. And the beauty of that program was that these people were principals, and they were earning money.
Right.
And I needed cash.
Ooh. Okay.
So it gave me the cash I needed to pay my bills.
How did, I want to get some point to present, but how did Nova's, what's the history of Nova? I should have looked this up.
It's the capstone. It was started as the capstone to the educational park, which is a public school park. What happened was higher education built FAU at a time when this was in being conceived. And they were not going to put another university right here. The next university was going to go down in Miami, FIU, not here. But this was going to be the capstone to this park, which was the purpose of the park was to invent, implement, evaluate, and disseminate new educational practices. That's why I left Berkeley to come here. I was a full professor, I was doing well, I wrote 12 books, I mean, I did all the right things,
Right.
but I didn't have a laboratory. All of a sudden, I had a laboratory.
Can you please explain to me, I'm sorry, what the Capstone Park is?
The capstone to the park, this park consists of 2 elementary schools, a middle school, a high school, Broward Community College at that time, and we were going to be the capstone to the park.
Okay.
Offering
The
graduate
4-year
degrees.
university, including master's and doctoral degrees.
Wow, so you were going to have the whole gamut.
Now we have it from birth
Right.
through retirement, this park,
IRP.
right now.
Interesting.
And that gave me a laboratory.
So now, transitioning to now, do you think that has education, if you'd have to give distance education a grade since 1970 and distance education 2012, what type of grade would you give it now?
Now,
Yeah.
depends on, I'd still give Nova an A.
Okay.
I'd
But-
still give Nova, but Nova started as an A.
Right.
It didn't start at a D level.
Right,
But-
because you brought in really high quality teachers. Right?
But
That I needed that to demonstrate to the other institutions that we were not a diploma mill.
right.
And I had to demonstrate it to the courts in North Carolina.
But okay, that taken. But now, what is the state of this distant education for you?
I'd say as an overall
As an
field,
industry, yeah.
probably C. Right now, you got Kaplan, that's a for-profit company that just does education. You have Kaiser College, which serves a purpose. Don't get me wrong, but it's okay.
They're training nurses, they're getting the
Yeah.
technicians out there.
Vocational, mostly vocational areas. I don't know. There are a couple of others that.
Everest Allied Health, I know around the
Yeah,
area.
I mean there are a couple of things, but they didn't take it. They didn't start and have to go through the struggle that this institution went through. Once I took North Carolina into court and won, no other state ever
Tried to do it.
threatened to not let me cease. If I got my 25 students, I was able to come into a state and file as a foreign corporation. Because
Okay.
in this country, each state controls its education.
Right. Yes, sir. Huh.
So the hero there was Gordon Sweet because he allowed innovation. I
That's
mean, it could have
correct.
been stopped right
That
there.
is correct.
Yeah.
But he also came,
Every year.
and he brought in people all the time. I even took him to Sinde in Colombia.
When you created the international program.
Exactly. Yeah. He really, he was a good guy, but he really went down and looked. He spent a week with me in Colombia.
He held you to a standard, but he kept the openness.
Well, because he himself was an open guy. He was a music and art teacher
That helps.
at one time.
Interesting.
That helps.
That's the innovation that Jeff is really interested in. How did this happen? It had to be because you saw the possibility, but you also were able to engage this. There was this opening within the establishment.
It took me $100,000 in legal fees to have a cluster that would return $10,000 to the overhead of the university. All the rest I used to pay the guys that were doing teaching and traveling. Remember, I had to pay expenses. I used to tell them, if you have a drink at night at home, I expect you to have a drink with me. But if you're not buying a $60 bottle of wine at home, don't spend $60 for me. So they had a limit, not set by me in dollars, but up here. I suspend this as though it's your own money. And periodically I would pick somebody up. I'd say to them, hey, do you buy a $60 bottle of wine when you're home? No. Well, why'd you spend $60? So they knew I looked.
Mm-hmm. Accountability.
Yeah. I mean,
Simple.
because I didn't want to per diem. I always felt you're putting in a Friday night and a Saturday and a Saturday night and a Sunday. I want you to live the normal life that you normally would use.
Right.
But I don't want you to hide it. If you have a bottle of wine and drink at night, I don't mind you having a bottle of wine. Or if you have a drink at night, I don't mind that. You put it right on a bill. Don't hide it.
Just don't be extravagant on my bill.
The way you spend your money, spend this money. But periodically, they didn't. So I would call somebody in quietly in an office and tell them, hey, this time I'll let it pass. But I'm not going to encourage you to buy a $60 bottle of wine.
And so now the concept is to take this idea that's basically, I mean, but you said you weren't, I maybe it was over the phone, you said you weren't the first person to come up with distant education. It had been done by other people before, just not in an accredited sense, or it had been done.
It wasn't done the way we did it.
Right. So basically you're taking, you took pieces and you created something out of it. I mean, you didn't invent the phone. You took things that were already existing.
Well, the phone was a
That's
phone.
what I'm saying. So, but now you're basically, what you're saying is you want to take the same thing. The concepts are there and the technology is there, but you want to, I'm not quite sure. Cause
Well, I heard you once say that the principals were using their own schools as the laboratory. They didn't have to, you didn't have, as a university, create a laboratory for the principals to come to.
Their building was their laboratory. Their practicums were done in their schools.
That's awesome.
So the university was going to the student.
And they actually had, being principals, they actually had some power to make change.
In the library on the main campus, on the third floor, you'll find a whole set of shelves. I didn't hide anything.
Right.
In fact, I encouraged the EDD and Ed leaders to put it into the, what they call it, a library that they used to do it. I forget the technical name. It was in Santa Barbara, so they would take a copy and put it in there. I encouraged them to do that.
Archives that everybody
Yeah, it was the
looks at.
archive, but
But
I kept a copy right here in my own library.
Past papers would help guide future students.
Yeah, it's an open system.
But it's a nice concept because you actually were able to, contact people who were able to, well, different than being an intern or being a student going into a school and hanging out. These people had actually, they were in a position where they could, the practicum.
If they couldn't do the practicum, they couldn't get a degree.
Right.
Their school had to be their laboratory.
Right.
So they had to get permission from their superintendent in most cases. But in the community college, I marketed through the presidents. I said, why don't you get 25 of your people together and you be the coordinator and use them as your change agent. And over a 3-year period, each one of them is going to have to do a different project. But hopefully held together by a concept that you have, that you want to see in your community college.
And so that's how you recruited students.
That's right. So
That
absolutely, because you can't do much as a teacher except in your own classroom. So if you're a principal, at least you got a body to work with. And at the community college, you also have a bunch of colleagues to work with. So you need that.
Where did your business background come from?